If the gospel were to be written today and became a part of the intellectual mainstream through glossy mass media, the average reader would undoubtedly ask the following questions. 1. Why do I need to know about the Messiah, and what's the significance? 2. Who is this Mr. Messiah? 3. What essential information should I have about the Messiah? 4. What do the Messiah's opponents say? 5. What should I do with this information? Clearly, if our goal is to reach as many of our contemporaries as possible and introduce them to the concept of the Messiah, we cannot afford to ignore these questions. Failing to address these questions could not only be a waste of time, but also risk alienating a significant portion of modern society from the study of Messianic Judaism. In preparing answers to these questions and studying the history of the Messiah concept in Judaism and the role of rabbis in it, I familiarized myself with two works: the Talmud about the Messiah by Joseph Shulam and Rabbi Akiva's Messiah by Daniel Gruber. These resources provide valuable insights into the concept of the Messiah, its historical development, and the pivotal role played by rabbis in shaping this belief. By addressing the questions raised by contemporary readers and learners, we can bridge the gap between traditional teachings and the modern intellectual mainstream, making the concept of the Messiah more accessible and relevant to today's audience. In answering the first question, why should we know about the Messiah? I recommend referring to Wikipedia, which states that there are approximately 2.5 billion Christians of various denominations in the world, accounting for roughly 33% of the global population. According to some projections, by the year 2050, the number of Christians is expected to increase by 1 billion, reaching 3.45 billion. Considering that the history of Christianity has been continuously shaping our civilization for over 2,000 years, it becomes evident that understanding the historical roots of Jesus as the Messiah is crucial. Without this understanding, we not only risk losing touch with our history, but may also struggle to fully comprehend our individual roles and the future identities of our children. The Messiah concept, as it relates to Jesus in Christianity, is a fundamental aspect of Western civilization's cultural and religious heritage. It has influenced art, literature, philosophy, ethics, and the development of moral and ethical frameworks that continue to shape societies around the world. Therefore, knowledge about the Messiah is not only important for believers, but for anyone interested in understanding the historical, cultural, and intellectual underpinnings of our global community. Whether someone likes it or not, over the past 2,000 years, Jesus of Nazareth has been and remains the most influential figure who has shaped the lives, culture, traditions, and societies of every country. Moving forward, where do we learn about Jesus? We learn about him from the books of the New Testament and the Old Testament, traditionally compiled into a collection of books called the Bible. But where did these books come from? Who are their authors? And most importantly, who made the Old Testament and why was the New Testament necessary? I assume that even the least religious person, raised in the spirit of scientific atheism, knows that the Bible was written by Jews and Jesus was crucified in Jerusalem. In fact, both the so-called Old and New Testaments were established between Jews and the one God, which logically leads to the conclusion that Jesus, as the Messiah, operated within the Jewish tradition of Judaism. Now, in this video, let's delve deeper into understanding what a covenant is. In the context of the Bible, a covenant refers to a significant concept denoting a covenant or agreement established by the one God with humanity, ordained through his benevolence and grace. The covenant in the Bible represents a unique historical and religious framework related to the relationship between the one God and his chosen people or individuals. In the Old Testament of the Bible, two primary covenants stand out: the covenant with Abraham and the covenant with Moses. The one God entered into a covenant with Abraham, promising him and his descendants land, blessings, and the assurance that through his descendants, all nations would be blessed. This covenant forms the foundation of the history of the Jewish people and their relationship with the one God. The concept of covenant in the Bible underscores the idea of a divine agreement, a sacred commitment, and a bond between God and humanity. It carries profound theological and moral implications, emphasizing the responsibilities and blessings associated with this divine relationship. Understanding these covenants is essential for comprehending the theological and historical underpinnings of the Judeo-Christian tradition, including the role of Jesus as the Messiah within the Jewish tradition. Indeed, the covenant with Abraham is described in the book of Genesis. Let's read together. Genesis 12, 1-3. The one God speaks to Abraham and promises to bless him, make him a great nation, and give him the land. This marks the first mention of the covenant with Abraham. Genesis 15, 1-21. The one God enters into a covenant with Abraham, promising him offspring that will be numerous and the land of Canaan as an eternal inheritance. Genesis 17, 1-27. This passage describes the circumcision of Abraham and the establishment of the covenant, in which the one God promises Abraham to be the father of many nations and to bestow blessings upon him. Genesis 22, 15-18. It tells the story of Abraham's test of faith when he was willing to offer his son Isaac as a sacrifice. The one God reaffirms the covenant with Abraham and promises to bless his descendants and the land. These passages in the book of Genesis illustrate the development and confirmation of the covenant with Abraham, emphasizing the promises of land, numerous descendants, and divine blessings. This covenant holds immense significance in the Judeo-Christian tradition and serves as a foundational narrative that shapes the identity and faith of believers. It's noteworthy that in the covenant with Abraham, we already see the prophecy of the chosen descendants, the Jews, and the blessing that would be brought to all nations. This, in fact, was fulfilled by Jesus in his role as the Messiah, a topic we will discuss further later on. The second covenant, established by the one God, was made with Moses and the Israelites at Mount Sinai. In this covenant, the 10 Commandments and the legislative framework of Moses were given. This covenant laid down rules and obligations for the Israelite people and defined their relationship with the one God. The covenant at Mount Sinai, often referred to as the Mosaic covenant, is a central element in Jewish tradition. It provides the moral and ethical foundation for the Jewish faith and, by extension, has had a profound influence on Western ethical and legal systems. This covenant represents the divine commitment to guide and protect the Israelites and their commitment to obey the commandments and worship the one God. In the Bible, this is described in several places. Let's read together. Exodus 19-24. In these chapters, we find the account of Moses' encounter with the one God on Mount Sinai, where the one God establishes the covenant with Moses and the Israelites. Within the framework of this covenant, the one God gives Moses the 10 Commandments and establishes the legislation for the people of Israel. Deuteronomy 29-30. In these chapters, Moses reiterates the covenant of the one God with the Israelites before their entry into the Promised Land. The covenant includes promises of blessings for faithfulness to the one God and warnings of the consequences of turning away. These passages in the Bible provide a detailed account of the establishment of the covenant between the one God, Moses, and the Israelites. This covenant is a foundational element in the history and faith of the Jewish people and is central to their religious identity and relationship with the one God. Indeed, in Deuteronomy 18:15-19, there is a prophecy about the prophet that Moses conveyed to the Israelite people. This prophecy states that the one God will raise up a prophet from among their brethren like Moses. This prophet will have God's words in his mouth and will convey the commandments of the one God to the people. This prophecy in the covenant with Moses is commonly seen as pointing to the future coming of the Messiah. It establishes a connection between Moses and the Messiah as great prophets and leads to the recognition of Jesus as the Messiah who came to fulfill the promises given by the one God. In the New Testament of the Bible, which is based on the life and teachings of Jesus as the Messiah, a new covenant is presented. This new covenant is founded on his death and miraculous resurrection. It forms the basis of Christian theology and emphasizes salvation through faith in Jesus as the Savior and the fulfillment of the prophetic promises of the Old Testament. The connection between the Old and New Testaments is a central theme in Christian theology, highlighting the continuity of God's plan for humanity and the role of Jesus as the Messiah in bringing about salvation and reconciliation with God. This new covenant reflects a new agreement between the one God and all those who believe in Jesus as the Messiah, who brought redemption and salvation. Let's delve into who the Messiah is. The term Messiah is derived from the Hebrew word Mashiach, Mashiach, which means anointed one. Christ is the Greek equivalent of the Hebrew Mashiach, Messiah, and it also means anointed one. The Messiah described in the Bible represents a spiritual, religious, and civic leader sent by the one God to accomplish salvation, bring peace, and fulfill God's plan for the redemption of humanity in accordance with the beliefs and traditions of the Jewish faith. In Jewish tradition, the Messiah is often associated with the concept of a future Savior who will restore the glory of Israel, gather the Jewish people, and usher in a Messianic age of peace and justice. In Christian belief, Jesus of Nazareth is recognized as the Messiah, or Christ, who fulfilled the prophetic promises of the Old Testament. Christians view Jesus as the Son of God and believe that his life, death, and resurrection brought salvation and reconciliation between God and humanity. The concept of the Messiah, whether in Judaism or Christianity, holds deep theological and spiritual significance, representing hope, redemption, and the fulfillment of divine promises. Indeed, in the Old Testament of Jewish tradition, there are prophecies that foretold the coming of the Messiah, the expected Savior and leader who would fulfill God's promises and usher in a messianic era of peace and righteousness. However, over time, Jewish tradition has become diverse, and different streams and schools of thought have offered various interpretations and expectations regarding the Messiah. The Old Testament in Hebrew is called the Tanakh, which is an acronym for the words Torah, Nevi'im, and Ketuvim. Each of these words reflects different sections and books that make up the Old Testament. Torah. This is the first section and means teaching or law. It includes the 5 books of Moses, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Nevi'im. This section comprises the books of the prophets, which include historical narratives and the writings of various prophets who conveyed God's messages to the people of Israel. It includes books like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel, among others. Ketuvim. This section is known as the Writings and includes a diverse collection of books, such as Psalms, Proverbs, Job, and the books of poetry and wisdom literature. Together, these sections form the Tanakh, which is the sacred scripture of Judaism. The Old Testament contains numerous prophecies, narratives, and teachings that are foundational to Jewish faith and tradition, and continue to influence Jewish thought and spirituality to this day. The prophecies about the Messiah found in the Nevi'im are an essential part of this rich tradition and have played a significant role in shaping Jewish expectations regarding the coming of the Messiah. Nevi'im is the second section, which means prophets. It includes books written by prophets such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and others. Ketuvim is the third section, which means writings. It includes books like Psalms, Proverbs, Job, and others. During the Second Temple period, 516 BCE, 70 CE, rabbis became key figures in Jewish society. They were responsible for studying and teaching the law and Jewish tradition. The concept of the Messiah developed within the Mishnah and Talmud, which served as the foundation for the formation of rabbinic law and tradition. These texts played a central role in shaping Jewish thought and practices related to the Messiah and other theological matters. Rabbis, as learned scholars and spiritual leaders, contributed to the evolving understanding of the Messiah and its significance within the Jewish tradition. They engaged in discussions and debates, providing interpretations and guidance on the Messianic concept, which has had a lasting impact on Jewish thought and belief. The term rabbin, from ancient Hebrew meaning my master or my teacher, is indeed not explicitly mentioned in the Old Testament. However, the development of rabbinic Judaism and the emergence of the role of rabbis date back to the period after the Second Temple. The period following the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem brought about significant changes in Jewish society. In the absence of the temple and priests, rabbis became central figures in preserving and transmitting Jewish tradition and law. Jerusalem Talmud. This Talmud was compiled and recorded in the 4th to 5th centuries CE in Palestine. It includes discussions, commentaries, and laws related to the Mishnah and other rabbinic teachings. Babylonian Talmud. This Talmud was compiled and recorded in the 5th to 6th centuries CE in Babylon, modern-day Iraq. It is more extensive and contains more comprehensive records of rabbinic discussions, including commentaries and explanations on the Mishnah and other texts. The Babylonian Talmud is the more widely studied and recognized of the two Talmuds and is often referred to simply as the Talmud. It has played a central role in Jewish scholarship and has had a profound influence on the development of Jewish law, ethics, and theology, including discussions related to Messianic concepts and expectations. Both Talmuds are considered foundational texts in rabbinic Judaism and serve as rich sources of Jewish thought, legal interpretation, and tradition. They continue to be studied and revered by Jewish scholars and communities worldwide. Both Talmuds cover a wide range of topics, including ethics, law, rituals, economics, medicine, and more. They serve as the foundation of rabbinic tradition, in which rabbis analyze and discuss various issues to apply Jewish law to specific situations. The Talmuds contain numerous records of discussions and arguments among different rabbis, reflecting not only the teachings and laws, but also the process of development and formation of rabbinic tradition. Many quotations from the Talmud, particularly in the tractate Sanhedrin, as found in Joseph Shulam's book, The Talmud of Jemanuel, provide insights into how Jesus was viewed among the Jewish establishment and rabbinic schools at different times. These texts also reveal expectations regarding the personal qualities of the Messiah. It is important to consider the historical and political context surrounding Israel after the Babylonian exile and leading up to the destruction of the Second Temple in order to understand the expectations surrounding the arrival of the Messiah as a liberator of the Jewish people and the restoration of an independent kingdom of Israel. This historical and contextual understanding is crucial when interpreting Messianic concepts and expectations within Rabbinic Judaism and the Talmudic texts. Indeed, writings from the early years following the death of Jesus provide valuable insights and additional historical perspectives on the sentiments within Jewish society, including the early church. The apostles were an integral part of Judaism, and faith in Jesus as the Messiah was perceived by many as one of the existing religious groups at the time, alongside the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes. Other parts of the Talmud, written after the spread of Christianity throughout the Byzantine Empire, contain discussions about Jesus as the Messiah, often in the form of encoded allusions, codes, and implicit references to various figures from the Bible. These discussions reflect the evolving perceptions and interactions between Jewish and early Christian communities during that period. The Talmudic texts provide valuable historical and contextual information about how Jesus and the Messianic concept were understood and discussed within Jewish thought and tradition. These discussions also shed light on the complex relationship between Judaism and Christianity in the centuries that followed Jesus' ministry and the emergence of the Christian faith. You've made some insightful points regarding the writings in the Talmud and their potential relevance to the study of Jesus as the Messiah. Indeed, the context in which these texts were written, including the presence of Christianity and the threat of persecution by the Roman authorities, plays a significant role in understanding the nature of these discussions. It's worth noting that the Talmudic texts may not outright deny the miracles associated with Jesus, his birth, his lineage from the house of David, his crucifixion, and his miraculous resurrection. Instead, they often focus on the failure of Jesus to fulfill the messianic functions as a leader of the Jewish nation, which becomes a central argument for those studying the Talmud within the context of belief in Jesus as the Messiah. Furthermore, the historical context of the Talmud and the interactions between Judaism and Christianity during that time period are essential for understanding the origins of conflicts and tensions between the two traditions. Exploring these historical dynamics can help uncover points of common ground and potential bridges for dialogue between Messianic Judaism and the existing universal church. Historical sources, as referenced in the books The Talmud About the Messiah by Joseph Shulam and Messiah Rabbi Akiva by Daniel Gruber, indicate that during the Second Temple period and after the temple's destruction, rabbis played an active role in studying, teaching, and interpreting the Torah and other sacred texts. They also commented on and interpreted the legislation. Rabbis became the custodians of Jewish knowledge and tradition, serving as teachers and guides for the Jewish community. They were responsible for the preservation and dissemination of Jewish law and the interpretation of religious texts, including the Messianic prophecies found in the Hebrew Bible. Their contributions were instrumental in shaping the development of Jewish thought and practice, including the understanding of the Messiah and Messianic expectations within Jewish tradition. The Talmud is the central compilation of rabbinic jurisprudence, commentaries, and discussions on the Mishnah and other sacred texts of Judaism. The Mishnah is one of the most important texts in Judaism. It represents the first written collection of the teachings of the oral law and tradition of Judaism. The Mishnah was compiled and recorded during the period from the 2nd to the 3rd century CE in Israel by Rabbi Judah Hanasi. He gathered various teachings and interpretations of the oral law that had been passed down orally through generations and organized them into a systematic and ordered form. The Mishnah consists of 6 sedarim, orders or sections, that cover various aspects of Jewish law and tradition. The Gemara is the second part of the Talmud and serves as commentary, interpretation, and discussion of the Mishnah. The Gemara is written in an Aramaic dialect and provides extensive analysis and elaboration on the legal and ethical issues presented in the Mishnah. The Talmud, which includes both the Mishnah and the Gemara, is a foundational text in Rabbinic Judaism. It plays a crucial role in Jewish scholarship, legal interpretation, and the development of Jewish thought. The Talmudic discussions and debates are integral to understanding the depth and complexity of Jewish law and tradition, as well as the interpretations and commentaries on various aspects of Jewish life, including the Messianic concept within Jewish thought and theology. The Gemara, written in an Aramaic dialect, contains discussions and arguments among the rabbis known as Amoraim. The Gemara expands and explains the Mishnah, clarifying various viewpoints and alternative opinions among the rabbis. Tanaim. This term is used to refer to the rabbis who were the authors of the Mishnah and other earlier teachings. They lived during the period from the 1st to the 3rd century CE and made significant contributions to the formation of Jewish tradition and law. Amoraim. These are the rabbis who wrote the Gemara and lived during the period from the 3rd to the 6th century CE. They continued the discussions and commentaries on the Mishnah, adding their arguments and explanations. The Tanaim and Amoraim collectively played a crucial role in the development of Jewish thought, interpretation of Jewish law, and the preservation and transmission of Jewish tradition. Their writings and debates found in the Talmud have had a profound and lasting impact on Jewish scholarship, shaping the understanding of various aspects of Judaism, including the concept of the Messiah within the Jewish theological framework. Indeed, the Mishnah and the Gemara together constitute the Talmud. The Mishnah is a collection of teachings and laws, while the Gemara serves as commentary and discussion on the Mishnah, written in an Aramaic dialect. Tanaim. These are the rabbis who authored the Mishnah. Amoraim. These are the rabbis who authored the Gemara. The Mishnah is organized into 6 sections known as Sedarim, each containing various masektot, tracts, dedicated to different aspects of Jewish law and rituals. There are a total of 63 masektot in the Mishnah. The topics covered in the Mishnah span a wide range of issues, including rituals, legal matters, ethics, economics, agriculture, and other aspects of Jewish life. One of the key features of the Mishnah is its presentation of a multitude of opinions and arguments from various rabbis, allowing for the study and understanding of different schools of thought and approaches within Judaism. This diversity of perspectives enriches the discussions and interpretations found in the Talmud, contributing to the depth and complexity of Jewish legal and ethical discourse, including discussions related to Messianic concepts and expectations. The Mishnah became the subject of further discussions, commentaries, and interpretations that were recorded in the Talmud. There are 2 primary compilations of the Talmud, the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud. The study of these historical and theological interactions contributes to a deeper understanding of the complex relationship between Judaism and Christianity and offers valuable insights into the development of both faiths. It can also serve as a basis for promoting mutual respect and understanding among believers of different traditions. Jesus of Nazareth remains a figure with exceptional influence on the lives, culture, and societies of every nation for the past 2,000 years. His place and role have been discussed and interpreted in various contexts and traditions. In Jewish tradition, the Old Testament and the Talmud are important sources shaping expectations regarding the Messiah and his role. As time progressed, different interpretations and discussions about the nature of the Messiah emerged. In the Christian tradition, Jesus is perceived as the fulfillment of the Messianic promises of the Old Testament, and his teachings and life are recorded in the New Testament. Studying the Talmud and the historical context helps us understand the complex relationship between Judaism and Christianity, as well as their mutual influence on the formation of religious and cultural identities. Thus, Jesus as the Messiah remains a significant historical and religious figure, symbolizing hope, salvation, and eternal truth for many people around the world. Thank you for watching. If you found this information interesting and want to learn more about religious and cultural aspects, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for even more fascinating content. Your likes and subscriptions help us continue sharing knowledge with you. We appreciate your support.